I donated a kidney to save my son, and 3 days after the surgery, he handed me a stack of papers and sent me to a nursing home. I thought I had given him the gift of life, but he was preparing to bury me alive. I was lying in that hospital bed, unable to move without screaming in pain when the door opened. I expected a hug or a thank you, but what I got was a pen jammed into my trembling hand. But just a few minutes later, the doctor walked in looking panicked. What she said next made my son freeze on the spot and change the course of our lives forever. Before I continue this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who mistook your kindness for weakness. My name is Walter Jefferson. I am 68 years old, and I have spent my life building things that last. Skyscrapers and Chicago bridges that span impossible distances, and a family that I thought was solid as concrete. But as I woke up from the anesthesia, the fog in my brain began to clear, and I realized that the foundation of my own home was built on sand. The first thing I felt was the fire in my right side. It felt like someone had taken a hot iron and branded my ribs. I tried to take a deep breath, but the pain cut it short, forcing a dry cough from my throat that tasted like metal and antiseptic. I blinked, trying to clear the blurry shapes in the room. I expected to see nurses monitoring my vitals or maybe a bouquet of flowers. I expected to see my son Kendrick sitting in the chair next to the bed, holding my hand with gratitude in his eyes. After all, I had just given him a part of myself. I had gone under the knife at my age to ensure he would not have to spend his life tethered to a dialysis machine. But there were no flowers. There was no water on the bedside table to soothe my parched throat. There was only Kendrick, standing at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, looking at his watch as if he were waiting for a bus that was running late. Kendrick looked healthy. Too healthy for someone who had just undergone a major transplant, I thought through the haze. But before I could form the words to ask him how he was feeling, he moved. He did not come to my side to check my temperature or fluff my pillow. He walked to the side of the bed and dropped a heavy, thick manila envelope directly onto my chest, right over the surgical gown. The weight of the paper pressed down on my incision, and I let out a gasp of pain. "You are finally awake," Pop Kendrick said. His voice held no warmth, no concern. It was the flat tone of a man conducting a business transaction he wanted to be over with. Water. I croaked my tongue, feeling like sandpaper against the roof of my mouth. Kendrick ignored the request. He tapped the envelope on my chest with his index finger. "We do not have time for that, Pop. You need to sign these. The transport van is going to be here in less than 2 hours, and if the paperwork is not done, they will leave without you." I tried to focus my eyes on the papers. The text swam before me, but the bold letters at the top of the first page were clear enough. Shady Pines Assisted Living Facility. Admission Agreement. I looked up at my son, confused. Shady Pines. I knew that place. It was a warehouse for the forgotten located on the south side of the city, a place where the hallways smelled of urine and bleach and the staff turnover was higher than a fast food restaurant. "What is this?" I whispered, pushing the heavy envelope off my chest with a trembling hand. "It is for your own good," Pop Kendrick said, but he refused to look me in the eye. "You are recovering from major surgery. You are old. You have 1 kidney now. You cannot take care of yourself in that big house anymore." I tried to sit up, but the pain slammed me back down against the mattress. I managed to glare at him. "I am not going to a home, Kendrick. I am going back to my house, the house I built, the house I let you and your wife live in for free for the last 5 years. Before Kendrick could answer, I heard the sharp staccato rhythm of high heels striking the linoleum floor. It sounded like a countdown. Click, clack, click, clack. Courtney, my daughter-in-law, breezed into the room. She was wearing a sharp beige business suit, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her makeup flawless. She did not look like a woman whose husband had just received an organ transplant. She looked like she was on her way to close a real estate deal. She stopped next to Kendrick and looked down at me with a mixture of pity and impatience. "Oh good, he is conscious," she said, checking her phone. "We are running behind schedule, Kendrick. The notary is waiting in the lobby." "What is going on here?" I asked, finding a reserve of strength in my anger. "Why are you talking about a notary?" Courtney sighed, a dramatic sound that grated on my nerves. "Walter, please do not make this difficult. We are trying to help you transition. We listed the house on the market 3 days ago." The words hung in the air, sucking the oxygen out of the sterile room. Listed. Not thinking about listing. Not discussing it. Listed. "You did what I asked," my voice rising despite the pain. We accepted a cash offer this morning, Courtney said, examining her manicure. It was below market value, sure, but we needed a quick close. The buyers want immediate possession. That means you cannot go back there, Walter. It is not your house anymore. I looked from Courtney to Kendrick, waiting for my son to laugh, waiting for him to tell me this was some sick joke caused by the medication. But Kendrick just stared at the floor, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Kendrick, I said, my voice shaking. Tell me you did not sell my house while I was on the operating table giving you my kidney. Kendrick finally looked up. His eyes were hard cold. It is done, Pop. We need the money. My crypto investments tanked, you know that. We are drowning in debt. And frankly, that house is a waste of capital. 4 bedrooms for one old man. It is selfish. Selfish. The word echoed in my head. I had just cut open my body to save his life. I had spent 40 years working as a structural engineer, pouring concrete and sweat to build a legacy. I had let them live in my home rent-free, paying for their groceries, covering their utility bills, while Kendrick played investor and Courtney pretended to be a high-end real estate agent. And now 3 days after I saved his life, he was calling me selfish. I am not signing anything, I said, gripping the bedsheets. Get out, both of you. Courtney let out a sharp laugh. She walked over to the bedside table and grabbed the plastic pitcher of water. For a second, I thought she might pour me a glass. Instead, she moved it just out of my reach, placing it on the windowsill. You are confused, Walter. That is the anesthesia talking. But let me make this clear. You do not have a choice. The house is sold. The movers are packing your things as we speak. Most of that old junk is going to the dump anyway. We kept a few clothes for you to take to Shady Pines. That is all you will need there. She leaned in closer, the scent of her expensive perfume clashing with the hospital smell. If you do not sign these transfer papers and the admission forms for the nursing home, we will simply leave you here. And when the hospital discharges you in 2 days, you will be homeless. Is that what you want? To be a homeless man with a fresh surgical wound on the streets of Chicago. I looked at Kendrick, my son. The boy I had taught to ride a bike. The boy I had tutored in math until midnight. The man I had just saved. Kendrick, I said softly, please, do not do this. Kendrick stepped forward. I saw a flash of hesitation in his eyes, but then he looked at Courtney, and whatever spine he had left crumbled. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a pen. He leaned over the bed, invading my personal space. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. Stop being dramatic, Pop, he whispered, his voice low and menacing. Look at you. You are weak. You are finished. You gave me the kidney, that is great, thanks. But that does not mean I owe you the rest of my life. He grabbed my right hand, the hand that had drawn the blueprints for the tallest towers in this city. His grip was tight, painful. He jammed the pen into my fingers and forced my hand toward the paper. Sign it, he hissed. Do it now so we can get on with our lives. You had your time. Now it is our turn. The pain in my side flared as I struggled against his grip. I felt a tear in the corner of my eye, not from the physical pain, but from the sheer heartbreak of it. This was the boy I loved. This was the legacy I had built. And he was crushing it for a quick payout. My hand hovered over the signature line, trembling uncontrollably. Kendrick pressed down harder, his fingernails digging into my wrist. Just sign it, old man, he growled, losing his composure. I gritted my teeth. I looked at the pen. I looked at the paper that would sign away my freedom and my dignity. No, I said. Kendrick raised his hand as if to strike me or force my hand down violently. Courtney was watching, her eyes gleaming with greed, waiting for the ink to hit the page. At that exact moment, the heavy door to the hospital room slammed open against the wall with a deafening bang. We all froze. Dr. Sasha Patel stood in the doorway. She was not wearing her usual calm, professional expression. Her lab coat was unbuttoned, flying behind her as if she had been running. Her chest was heaving, and her eyes were wide with a mixture of panic and fury. Behind her were 2 large hospital security guards and a uniformed police officer. She did not look at me. Her gaze was locked on Kendrick like a laser. Get away from him! She shouted, her voice cracking with intensity. Kendrick jumped back, dropping my hand. The pen fell onto the sheets, leaving a stray mark of black ink. What is your problem? Kendrick stammered, trying to regain his composure. We are having a private family moment here. Dr. Patel marched into the room, ignoring Courtney, who tried to block her path. She grabbed the papers off my chest and threw them onto the floor without even looking at them. She turned to Kendrick, her face inches from his. Private family moment, she spat. You have some nerve being here. I thought you were in the recovery ward, or better yet, in a holding cell. I watched, confused. The pain in my side was throbbing, but the adrenaline of the moment kept me focused. Doctor, what is going on? I asked, my voice weak. Why are you yelling at my son? Patel turned to me, and her expression softened, instantly shifting from rage to deep, professional concern. She placed a hand gently on my shoulder. Mr. Jefferson, I am so sorry. We tried to get here sooner. We did not know he had come to your room. She took a deep breath and turned back to Kendrick, who was now backing away toward the window, looking like a trapped animal. Kendrick Jefferson. Dr. Patel announced, her voice ringing with authority. You need to explain to your father why you are standing here looking fit and healthy while he is lying there in agony. Kendrick said nothing. He looked at Courtney, who had gone pale. Tell him, Dr. Patel commanded. Kendrick remained silent. Fine, I will tell him, Dr. Patel said. She looked at me, and the words she spoke next stopped time. Mr. Jefferson, the transplant never happened. Your kidney was removed from your body, yes, but it was never put into your son. I stared at her, my mind unable to process the sentence. I moved my hand to my side, feeling the thick bandages. But I whispered, You took it out. Where is it? Dr. Patel glared at Kendrick. Your son decided to have a little celebration the night before the surgery, a farewell party to his failing kidneys. He tested positive for massive amounts of alcohol and cocaine this morning right before he was prepped. She held up a clipboard showing the toxicology report. He violated every protocol of the transplant list. He was disqualified immediately. We could not put a healthy organ into a compromised system. It would have been malpractice. I looked at Kendrick. The shame on his face was overshadowed by his anger at being caught. So I gasped. My kidney. We had to make an emergency decision, Dr. Patel explained. Once the organ was out of you, we had a very short window. Since your son was ineligible and legally removed from the list, we transported your kidney to the next matching patient on the priority list, a young man at St. Luke's. You saved a life today, Mr. Jefferson, just not his. The room fell silent. The only sound was the beeping of the monitor measuring my racing heart. Kendrick was not recovering from surgery. He was just hungover. He had let me go through with the operation knowing he had disqualified himself. He had let me cut a piece of myself out for nothing. And then knowing all of this, knowing he had wasted my sacrifice, he had come in here to bully me out of my house and into a nursing home. Courtney was the first to speak, breaking the silence with a voice that could cut glass. Well, that is just perfect, she screeched, throwing her hands up. So he is useless then. He has no kidney, and he is still sick. She turned to me, her eyes full of venom. You are even more of a burden now, Walter. You are half a man with nothing to offer. You better sign those papers right now because we are going to need every penny to pay for Kendrick's dialysis since he blew his chance at a transplant. She picked the papers up off the floor and threw them back at me. Sign it, she screamed. Sign it or rot here. I looked at the papers scattered on my legs. I looked at Dr. Patel, who was signaling the police officer to step forward. And then I looked at my son. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Courtney, terrified of her anger. I closed my eyes and took a breath. The pain was still there, but something else was rising up to meet it. A cold, hard resolve. No, I said. And this time I opened my eyes and looked straight at the police officer. Officer, I want these people removed from my room, and I want to file a report for attempted fraud and elder abuse. Kendrick's eyes went wide. Courtney gasped. You wouldn't dare, Kendrick whispered. Watch me, I said. And as the officer reached for his handcuffs, I knew that the surgery was just the beginning. The real cut had just been made, and I was about to bleed them dry. The silence in the room was shattered by a sound that I will never forget. It was the sound of a grown man, a man I had raised and loved, realizing that his own hubris had just signed his death warrant. Kendrick let out a scream that was part rage and part animalistic terror. He lunged toward Dr. Patel, his hands clawing at the air as if he could physically rip the truth out of her mouth and stuff it back in. My kidney! He roared, his face turning a dark, violent shade of purple. You stole my kidney. That organ belongs to me. It is my birthright. You had no right to give it away. The police officer stepped forward, his hand resting heavily on his taser, but Dr. Patel did not flinch. She did not step back. She stood her ground like a steel beam bearing the weight of a skyscraper. She reached into the pocket of her white coat and pulled out a single folded sheet of paper. It crinkled in her grip. With a motion that was almost casual, she flicked the paper at Kendrick. It hit him square in the chest and fluttered to the floor, landing between his expensive designer sneakers. Read it. Dr. Patel said, her voice cutting through his hysteria like a scalpel. Read the toxicology report, Kendrick. Read the timestamps. Kendrick stared at the paper as if it were radioactive. He did not want to pick it up. He knew what it said. But the denial was a powerful drug, almost as powerful as the ones he had evidently consumed the night before. I do not need to read your lies, he spat. I had a few drinks. So what? It was a send-off, a goodbye to the dialysis machine. I was celebrating my new life. Celebrating, Dr. Patel repeated the word, dripping with disgust. You call a blood alcohol level of 0.18 celebrating. You call testing positive for cocaine and opioids celebrating. I lay frozen in the bed, my hand clutching the side rail. Cocaine. The word bounced around my skull. My son. My Kendrick. I had spent the night before surgery praying to God, asking him to guide the surgeon's hands, asking him to let my son live a long and healthy life. And while I was on my knees praying, Kendrick was somewhere in the city snorting lines and taking shots, laughing at the second chance I was about to give him. You violated the contract, Kendrick. Dr. Patel continued, her voice rising. You signed a document. Every transplant recipient signs it. You swore to maintain a clean lifestyle to prepare your body for the immense trauma of organ reception. Instead, you turned your bloodstream into a toxic waste dump. She took a step closer to him, pointing a finger at his face. Do you have any idea what would have happened if we had opened you up and stitched that kidney in? Your heart would have likely stopped on the table. The anesthesia combined with the cocktail of drugs in your system would have killed you. And even if you had survived the surgery, your body was so inflamed, so poisoned, that it would have rejected my patient's kidney in hours. We would have wasted a healthy organ on a corpse. Kendrick was shaking now. The fight was draining out of him, replaced by a dawning horror. But I sobered up, he whispered, his voice trembling. I slept it off. I am fine now. Put it in. Just put it in. It does not work like that, Dr. Patel said. This is not a car part, Kendrick. This is living tissue. This is a gift of life. And the United Network for Organ Sharing has zero tolerance for recipients who treat that gift with such flagrant disrespect. You were flagged the moment the labs came back. You were removed from the list at 6:05 this morning. Kendrick looked at me. His eyes were wide, pleading, terrified. Pop, tell her. Tell her it is your kidney. Tell her you want me to have it. You can override this. You are the donor. I looked at my son. I saw the sweat beading on his forehead. I saw the desperation. But I also saw the truth. He did not see me as his father. He saw me as a spare parts bin. He had risked everything for a night of partying because he did not respect the sacrifice. He did not respect me. I cannot tell her anything, Kendrick. I said, my voice raspy and weak. I gave the kidney. It was gone from me the moment they put me under. It is not mine anymore. Kendrick turned back to the doctor, his hands shaking violently. Where is it then, he demanded. If it is not in him and it is not in me, where is it? Is it in a jar somewhere? Is it in the trash? Dr. Patel's expression shifted. The anger remained, but beneath it was a layer of professional solemnity. We do not throw life in the trash, Kendrick. Not like you do. She clasped her hands in front of her. When we realized you were ineligible, we had a crisis. Mr. Jefferson was already in recovery. His kidney was on ice. An organ has a shelf life measured in hours, not days. We could not put it back into Walter. The risk of a second surgery on an older patient just to reimplant an organ was too high. She paused, letting the weight of the situation settle over the room. We contacted the regional coordinator immediately. There was a match nearby, a priority patient, a young man who has been in critical failure for weeks. He was prepped and ready within the hour. She looked straight at Kendrick, delivering the final blow. Your father's kidney is currently being stitched into the body of a 30-year-old high school teacher at St. Luke's Hospital. The surgery is nearly complete. The kidney is perfusing. It is making urine. It is working, Kendrick. It is saving a life. Just not yours. Kendrick made a sound like a wounded animal. He fell back against the wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. He pulled at his hair, rocking back and forth. No, 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 he moaned. That was mine. That was mine. I closed my eyes. A stranger. A teacher. Someone I did not know was walking around or would be soon with a piece of me inside them. I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. It wasn't wasted. My pain wasn't for nothing. But the peace was shattered instantly. You idiot! The voice was sharp, piercing, and full of venom. It came from Courtney. I opened my eyes. Courtney was standing over Kendrick, her face twisted into a mask of pure loathing. She was not comforting him. She was not holding him. She was looking at him like he was something she had stepped in on the sidewalk. "You absolute useless junkie!" she screamed, kicking his leg with the point of her expensive heel. Kendrick looked up, shocked. "Courtney, baby, please. Do not baby me," she snapped. "You had one job, Kendrick. One job. Stay sober, get the kidney, get healthy so we could get the inheritance." That was the plan. She paced around the small hospital room, her hands flying in the air. "I stuck with you through the gambling debts. I stuck with you through the failed crypto schemes. I stuck with you because I thought at the very least you would outlive the old man and we would get the estate. But now look at you." She gestured to his pathetic form on the floor. "You are going to be on dialysis for the rest of your miserable life. You are uninsurable. You are a financial black hole. And you blew the one chance we had to fix it." "Courtney, stop," Kendrick pleaded, reaching for her hand. She slapped his hand away. "I am done," she said. "I am not spending the prime of my life nursing a broke dialysis patient who cares more about cocaine than his own future." She reached into her purse. I thought she was going to pull out a tissue or a phone. Instead, she pulled out a folded document. It looked legal, official. She threw it onto the bed right next to my leg. "I was going to save this for later," she said, her voice turning cold and calculated. "I was going to wait until we had the house secured. But since you two idiots ruined everything, I am accelerating the timeline." I looked at the paper. It was a petition for divorce. But as I scanned the top lines, I saw my name listed as a respondent regarding assets. "What is this?" I asked, looking up at her. Courtney smoothed her skirt and looked at me. The mask of the loving daughter-in-law was gone completely. Underneath was a predator who realized her meal ticket was slipping away. "It is a divorce petition, Walter. I am leaving your loser son. But do not think that gets you off the hook." She pointed a manicured finger at my face. "You are useless to me now, old man. You have one kidney. You are weak. You are going to need expensive post-operative care. You are nothing but a medical bill waiting to happen." She walked around the bed flanking me, her presence looming over my vulnerable state. "You heard the doctor. You gave away your kidney to a stranger. That means you have no leverage anymore. You cannot dangle your health over us. You are just a liability." She grabbed the other stack of papers, the ones Dr. Patel had knocked to the floor earlier, and slammed them onto the tray table. "Sign the house over, Walter, right now. Call it a settlement. Call it alimony for putting up with your son for 5 years. I do not care what you call it. Just sign the deed." I stared at her. She was divorcing him, but she still wanted my house. The audacity was breathtaking. "Why would I give you my house?" I asked, my voice steady despite the pain. "You just admitted you are leaving the family." "Because if you do not," she hissed, leaning in close, "I will make sure you rot. I am the one who has been handling your bills, Walter. I am the one with the passwords to your accounts. I am the one who knows where the bodies are buried." She laughed, a cruel, dry sound. "You think Kendrick is the only one who made mistakes? I have been managing your finances for 2 years. If you do not sign this house over to me, I will disappear and I will take every cent in your checking account with me. You will be destitute, a one-kidney pauper on the street." She looked at Kendrick, who was still sobbing on the floor, then back at me. "He is an addict, Walter. He cannot take care of you. He cannot even take care of himself. I am the only one who knows how to run this household. You sign the house to me and maybe I will let you live in the basement. I will hire a nurse with your pension check. It is the best offer you are going to get." I looked at this woman, this stranger with a ring I had paid for. She was threatening to embezzle me. She was threatening to blackmail me. She was kicking my son while he was down and trying to step on my neck to get a leg up. I looked at Dr. Patel. The doctor was standing by the door, her hand on the police officer's arm, signaling him to wait. She was watching me, waiting to see what I would do. I looked at the papers. The divorce decree, the deed transfer. Courtney tapped the paper. "Sign it, old man. You are finished. Your kidney is gone. Your son is a failure. You are a burden. Do one useful thing before you die and secure my future. I earned it dealing with you people." I reached out my hand. My fingers brushed the paper. Courtney smiled a greedy, triumphant smile. She thought she had won. She thought I was broken. But she forgot one thing. I was an engineer. I knew how to spot a structural failure, and I knew exactly where to place the dynamite to bring the whole thing down. I picked up the pen. Courtney's eyes lit up. "That is it," she whispered. "Be a good boy." I held the pen over the paper, and then I looked her dead in the eye. "You want the house?" I asked softly. "Yes," she breathed. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Then you better learn how to pick locks," I said, and with a sudden burst of energy I threw the pen across the room. It hit the wall with a crack. "Get out!" I roared. Courtney flinched. The police officer stepped forward, his hand on his baton. "I said get out!" I yelled, the pain in my ribs forgotten in the heat of my rage. "You are not getting the house. You are not getting a dime. And if you think you can threaten me, you have no idea who you are dealing with." Courtney's face twisted into an ugly snarl. "You will regret this," she screamed. "You will die alone in the gutter." Officer Dr. Patel's voice cut through the noise, sharp and commanding. "Remove this woman from the premises, immediately." The officer moved fast. He grabbed Courtney by the arm. She shrieked, trying to pull away, but he held firm, dragging her toward the door. "You are making a mistake," she yelled, kicking and screaming. "I will ruin you, Walter. I will burn that house to the ground." As she was hauled into the hallway, her threats echoing off the tiles, I looked at Kendrick. He was still on the floor, watching his wife being dragged away. He looked small, defeated. He looked at me, expecting pity, expecting his father to fix it. But I had nothing left to give him. The well was dry. "Get him out too," I said to Dr. Patel. Kendrick gasped. "Pop, no. Out," I said, closing my eyes. As the second officer lifted Kendrick and guided him out the door, I lay back against the pillows. My body was throbbing. My heart was breaking, but my mind was clear. They wanted a war. They wanted my assets. They wanted to strip me down to nothing. They had no idea that I had built skyscrapers. I knew how to weather a storm, and I was about to bring the thunder. The heavy wooden door had barely clicked shut behind the officer escorting Kendrick and Courtney when a guttural roar erupted from the hallway. It was a sound so raw and filled with hatred that it made the hair on my arms stand up. It sounded like a wild animal caught in a trap. Suddenly the door flew open again. The police officer stumbled backward, losing his grip as Kendrick shoved him into the doorframe. My son stood there for a split second, his eyes wild, his chest heaving. He looked deranged. The withdrawals from whatever he had taken the night before were kicking in, mixing with the adrenaline of his ruined life. He locked eyes with me. "You did this," he screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. "You set me up. You knew. You knew all along." He charged. He moved faster than I thought possible for a man in his condition. He cleared the distance between the door and my bed in 2 strides. His hands were curled into claws, reaching for my throat, reaching to hurt the father he had already bled dry. Dr. Patel stepped in front of me, her arms spread wide, a human shield in a white coat. "Back off," she shouted. Kendrick did not stop. He shoved her aside, sending her crashing into the medical cart. Metal trays and instruments clattered to the floor with a deafening crash. I tried to push myself up to defend myself, but the pain in my side anchored me to the mattress. I was helpless. I watched the madness in my son's eyes as he loomed over me, his fist raised. "I hope you die," he shrieked. "I hope your incision rots." Before he could bring his fist down, the second security guard tackled him from the side. They hit the floor with a bone-jarring thud. The police officer recovered and jumped into the fray, pressing his knee into Kendrick's back. Kendrick thrashed and kicked, screaming profanities that no father should ever hear from his child. He was fighting like a man who had nothing left to lose. Courtney stood in the doorway watching. She did not scream. She did not try to help him. She did not try to calm him down. She looked at her husband, pinned to the floor, his face pressed against the linoleum, and then she looked at me. Her eyes were wide with calculation. She saw the assault charges piling up. She saw the violence. She saw the sinking ship. And she made a choice. "I had nothing to do with this," she yelled toward the officers, her voice shrill. "He is crazy. I am leaving. Do not touch me." She turned on her expensive heels and ran. She actually ran down the hospital corridor, the sound of her footsteps fading rapidly. She left him there. She left the man she had conspired with the man she claimed to love. She left him to face the consequences alone while she saved her own skin. Kendrick watched her go, his head twisted to the side under the officer's weight. The look on his face broke my heart one last time. It was the look of a man realizing he was completely and utterly alone. "Get him out of here," the officer grunted, snapping the handcuffs onto Kendrick's wrists. They hauled him up. His fight was gone. He hung limp in their grip, sobbing now. great heaving sobs of a child who wants his mother but knows he has been too bad to ask for her. He did not look at me again as they dragged him out. Dr. Patel picked herself up from the floor, brushing glass shards from her coat. She checked her arm where she had hit the cart, then rushed to my side. "Mr. Jefferson, are you all right? Did he touch you?" I shook my head slowly. "I am fine," I said, my voice hollow. "Physically, I am fine." But I wasn't fine. The image of my son trying to beat me on my deathbed was burned into my retinas. The sound of his wife abandoning him echoed in my ears. This was my legacy. This was what I had produced. I looked at the empty doorway. "I cannot stay here," I said. Dr. Patel looked at me confused. "What do you mean?" "You have to stay. You are 3 days post-op. We need to monitor your creatinine levels. We need to watch for infection, especially after that scene. Your blood pressure is through the roof." I pushed the blankets off my legs. The movement sent a fresh wave of agony through my side, but I gritted my teeth and ignored it. "I am not staying in this room," I said, swinging my legs over the edge of the bed. "They know I am here. Courtney is out there. She will come back. She will bring a lawyer or she will bring a thug. I am vulnerable here. Mr. Jefferson, you cannot leave," Dr. Patel insisted, putting a hand on my shoulder to stop me. "You are in no condition to walk, let alone go home, and you have no home to go to, remember. They sold it." I looked at her. She was a good doctor, a good person. She had saved me from signing those papers, but she did not know who I really was. She did not know what I was capable of. "I am not going home," I said, standing up. My knees wobbled, but I locked them. "I am going somewhere safe." I reached for the bedside table where my personal effects bag had been stashed. I dug through it until I found my phone. It was an old model, simple and unassuming, just like the life I had pretended to live. I turned it on. "Dr. Patel, I am signing myself out against medical advice. Please prepare the paperwork." "Walter, listen to me," she pleaded. "This is dangerous. You could develop sepsis. You could tear your stitches." I looked her in the eye. "Doctor, the most dangerous thing for me right now is my family. If I stay here, I am a sitting duck. I need to move. Now, are you going to help me, or do I have to walk out of here with this IV pole trailing behind me?" She stared at me for a long moment, assessing my resolve. She saw that I would not be swayed. "Fine," she sighed. "But I am prescribing you a heavy course of antibiotics and painkillers, and I want you to check in with me every 12 hours, or I will call the police myself to find you." "Deal," I said. I dialed a number I had not called in 5 years. It rang twice. "J.D. Harrington and Associates," a crisp professional voice answered. "Put J.D. on," I said. "Sir, Mr. Harrington is in a meeting. May I ask who is calling? Tell him it is Walter Jefferson. Tell him I am activating Protocol Omega." There was a pause, a silence that carried the weight of a heavy secret. "Hold, please, sir." 10 seconds later, a deep, booming voice came on the line. "Walter, is it time?" "It is time, J.D.," I said, my voice steady. "They tried to take the house. They tried to put me in a home, and Kendrick tried to attack me in the hospital." "My God," J.D. breathed. "Are you safe?" "For now. I am leaving the hospital. I need you to execute the protocol immediately. Freeze everything. The trust, the accounts, the hidden assets. I want Kendrick and Courtney erased from the will. I want their access to any subsidiary accounts terminated. And J.D., I want you to foreclose on the house in Chicago." "The one they are living in," J.D. asked. "The one they think they sold," I corrected him. "Evict them, tonight. Consider it done, Walter. Where are you going?" "I am going to the safe house," I said. I hung up. Dr. Patel was watching me with a mixture of confusion and awe. She had heard the change in my voice, the authority, the power. "Protocol Omega," she asked quietly. "Just an insurance policy," I said, slipping the phone into my pocket. "For a rainy day. And doctor, it is pouring outside." 30 minutes later, I was dressed in my sweatpants and a loose button-down shirt. I sat in a wheelchair by the hospital entrance waiting for the car I had called. The pain in my side was a dull, constant throb kept at bay by the pills Dr. Patel had forced on me. A black town car pulled up to the curb. Not a taxi, a private service. The driver, a large man in a dark suit, got out and opened the rear door. "Mr. Jefferson," he said, nodding respectfully. I pulled myself out of the wheelchair. I stood tall, ignoring the fire in my ribs. I shook Dr. Patel's hand. Thank you, I said. You saved my life twice today. Take care of yourself, Walter, she said, and call me. I slid into the leather seat of the car. The door closed, shutting out the hospital, shutting out the noise, shutting out the life I had lived for the last 40 years. To the Ritz-Carlton, please, I told the driver. He nodded and pulled away into the Chicago traffic. I watched the city roll by through the tinted window. This was the city I had helped build. I knew the steel skeleton inside every skyscraper. I knew the stress points. I knew how much weight they could hold before they buckled. I had built my son the same way I thought. I had given him a strong foundation. I had used the best materials. Love, education, support. But somewhere along the line, the structural integrity had failed. There was a rot deep inside him that I had ignored for too long. We pulled up to the Ritz-Carlton, the grand hotel that stood as a beacon of luxury in the downtown district. The doorman rushed to open the car door. I stepped out, leaning heavily on my cane. I looked like any other old man recovering from surgery, a bit disheveled, a bit weak. But as I walked through the revolving doors, the atmosphere changed. The concierge looked up and his eyes went wide. He tapped the arm of the manager standing next to him. They hurried out from behind the marble desk. Mr. Jefferson, the manager said, bowing slightly. We did not know you were coming. I did not know either, I said. I need a room. The manager smiled. Sir, you do not need a room. You have the residence. He snapped his fingers at a bellhop. Inform housekeeping to prep the presidential suite immediately and get Mr. Jefferson a wheelchair. He looks tired. I waved the wheelchair away. I can walk, I said. The manager guided me toward the private elevator bank, the one reserved for VIPs and owners. Welcome back, Chairman Jefferson, he said, swiping a gold key card. It has been too long. I leaned back against the velvet wall of the elevator as it ascended. Chairman. It was a title I had not used in a decade. You see, I was not just a retired engineer. I was the silent partner in the engineering firm that had built half this city. I owned the patent on a type of stress-resistant concrete used in every bridge in the Midwest. I was worth millions. But I had lived in a 3-bedroom ranch house in the suburbs driving a 10-year-old truck because I wanted my son to learn the value of $1. I wanted him to be humble. I had failed. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. The suite was massive with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. The furniture was Italian leather. The floors were imported marble. It was cold. It was empty. It was lonely. But it was mine, and no one could kick me out of it. I walked to the window and looked down at the city lights. Somewhere down there, my son was in a jail cell. Somewhere down there, his wife was running away with whatever cash she could grab. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the bottle of pain pills. I swallowed 2 without water. They thought I was a helpless old man. They thought I was a burden. They were about to find out that I was the one holding the sky up, and I was done carrying their weight. I pulled out my phone and dialed JD again. It is done, JD asked. I am in the suite, I said. Now let's get to work. I want a full audit of every dime Kendrick has touched in the last 5 years. And JD find out who holds his gambling debts. I want to buy them. Why, Walter, JD asked. Because I said watching my reflection in the glass. I want to own everything that owns him. I want him to know that there is nowhere he can run where I am not already waiting. I hung up the phone and sat in the high-back chair facing the city. The surgery was over. The recovery had begun. And the demolition of Kendrick Jefferson's life was scheduled for first thing tomorrow morning. The notification on my phone vibrated against the mahogany table of the Ritz-Carlton suite just as I was pouring a glass of sparkling water. It was a security alert from the house in Chicago. I picked up the device and tapped the screen, opening the live feed from the new high-definition cameras I had installed months ago without my family knowing. On the small screen, I saw Courtney standing on my front porch. She was wearing sunglasses and looking over her shoulder nervously. Beside her was a man in blue coveralls holding a heavy tool bag, a locksmith. She was trying to break in. She thought I was stuck at the hospital or en route to the nursing home, and she wanted to get inside to change the locks before I could come back. She wanted to establish residency. Squatters' rights, essentially. I watched as she gestured angrily at the door. The locksmith knelt down to examine the deadbolt. I turned up the volume on my phone. Just drill it out, she snapped. I lost my key and I have perishable groceries in the car. Hurry up. The locksmith shook his head, standing up. Lady, this is not a standard pin tumbler, he said, wiping his hands on his pants. This is a biometric scanner with a reinforced steel core. I cannot pick this. I would need a thermal lance to get through it, and I am not doing that without a deed or a police presence. Courtney stomped her foot. I live here, she screamed. My husband owns this house. Just break the window then. She reached for a brick lining the flower bed. I tapped a button on my phone app. Instantly, the house came alive. A deafening siren erupted from the eaves loud enough to wake the dead 3 blocks away. Red strobe lights flashed from the porch ceiling, bathing Courtney in a chaotic crimson glow. A robotic voice boomed from the hidden speakers. Intruder alert. Biometric scan failed. Police have been dispatched. Courtney dropped the brick and covered her ears, screaming something that was lost in the noise. The locksmith did not wait around to ask questions. He grabbed his bag and sprinted down the driveway, jumping into his van and peeling away. Neighbors started coming out onto their porches. Mrs. Gable from across the street was pointing at Courtney. Courtney looked at the flashing lights, then at the gathering crowd. She realized she was not taking possession of anything today. She was just a woman standing on a porch that had rejected her. She ran to her car, shielding her face from the neighbors' stares, and drove off, leaving the alarm howling in her wake. I disarmed the siren from my phone and took a sip of my water. Strike one. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. It was not the security system this time. It was Kendrick. I let it ring 3 times before answering. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to think I might not pick up. When I finally swiped the green icon, I did not say hello. I just listened. "You did this," he screamed. His voice was raw, frantic. He sounded like a man who was watching the water rise above his head. I did what Kendrick I asked, calm and cool. The bill, he shrieked. The hospital bill. They just handed it to me. They are discharging me, and the financial counselor just walked in. I leaned back in the Italian leather chair, and I asked, $150,000, Pop. $150,000. He was hyperventilating now. They denied the claim. The insurance company denied the entire surgery, the prep, the anesthesia, the OR time, everything. They cited a clause about substance abuse and non-compliance. They said because I tested positive for drugs, it was an elective violation of the policy. I took a bite of the steak that room service had just delivered. It was perfectly cooked, tender, and rich. That sounds like a problem, Kendrick, I said, chewing slowly. A problem, he yelled. It is a disaster. They want a payment plan set up before I leave the building. They are threatening to send it to collections immediately. They are talking about garnishing wages I do not even have. He paused, and I could hear him sobbing on the other end. You have to pay it, Pop. You have the pension. You have the savings. You have to write a check. I swallowed the steak and wiped my mouth with a linen napkin. I do not have to do anything I said. You made the choice to party. You made the choice to violate the contract. That is your debt, son, not mine. But I am your son, he pleaded. I made a mistake. Are you going to let them ruin my credit? Are you going to let them bankrupt me over one mistake? It was not one mistake, Kendrick. It was a lifetime of mistakes culminating in the moment you tried to force me into a nursing home. You need to fix this, he demanded, his voice hardening again, the entitlement breaking through the fear. Sell the house. Courtney said we got an offer. Call the realtor back. Sell the house and pay this bill. It is the least you can do after giving my kidney away. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. The house, I said. You want to sell the house? Yes, sell the damn house, he shouted. I picked up the glass of wine, looking at the deep red liquid swirling against the crystal. There is no house to sell, Kendrick. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice dropping. I set the phone down on the table, putting it on speaker so I could cut another piece of beef. I received a notice from the bank this morning. I lied, my voice smooth as silk. Apparently there were some outstanding liens on the property. Liens related to online gambling debts. Massive ones. There was silence on the other end. Gambling debts, Kendrick whispered. Yes, I continued, inventing the story on the fly, weaving his own vices into a trap. It seems someone used the deed as collateral for some very bad bets. The bank has accelerated the foreclosure process. They seized the property an hour ago. That explains why the locks were changed and the alarm was set. It is a bank asset now. That is a lie, he stammered. I never used the deed. I used credit cards. Well, someone did, I said. And since I did not do it and Courtney claims she is a real estate genius, I assume one of you got desperate. I took another bite, savoring the flavor. So you see, Kendrick, even if I wanted to help you, which I do not, I have no liquid assets. The house is gone, sealed, frozen. But where will we live? He cried. Courtney and I, we have nowhere to go. That is a good question, I said. Maybe you can stay at the Ritz. The service here is excellent, but they do require a credit card at check-in, and yours are all maxed out, aren't they?" "You are at the Ritz?" he asked, stunned. "I am enjoying a very nice Wagyu steak," I said, "and I am celebrating." Celebrating what, he asked, his voice trembling with hatred and envy. "I am celebrating my freedom," I said. "Good luck with the bill, Kendrick. And good luck with the bank." I hung up the phone and poured myself another glass of wine. The house wasn't seized by the bank, of course. It was locked down by the Vance Engineering Trust, my trust. But Kendrick didn't need to know that. He needed to believe that his own actions had burned the roof over his head. I looked out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, my son was holding a bill that would bury him, and my daughter-in-law was running from a house that had rejected her. The demolition was proceeding exactly according to plan. The police cruiser lights flashed red and blue against the darkening sky of the Chicago suburbs, illuminating the front of my house like a crime scene. Courtney stood on the lawn, tears streaming down her face, her performance worthy of a daytime soap opera. She had called 911 claiming I was a missing vulnerable adult trapped inside, knowing that a wellness check was the only way to bypass the biometric locks she could not pick. "Please, officer," she sobbed, clutching her chest. "My father-in-law is inside. He just had surgery 3 days ago. He is confused. He might have fallen. You have to break the door down. He could be dying in there." The responding officer, a seasoned veteran with a weary face, looked at the steel-reinforced door and then back at Courtney. He held a clipboard in his hand. "Ma'am, I understand your concern," he said, his voice flat. "But we have run a check on the residence. There is no indication of a disturbance." "He is not answering the phone," Courtney shrieked, escalating the drama. "He is senile. He probably forgot how to use it. You have to let me in. I live here." The officer looked at his notes. "Name: Courtney Jefferson," she lied smoothly. "My husband, Kendrick Jefferson, owns this property. We have the deed. We just need access to help his father." The officer tapped his radio. "Dispatch, can you verify the owner of record for 1402 Maple Drive?" Courtney paced nervously, her heels clicking on the driveway. She was already mentally calculating which drawers she would raid first once the police battered down the door. She needed the banking files. She needed the cash she knew I kept in the safe. The radio crackled back, a disembodied voice cutting through the evening air. "Owner of record is listed as the Vance Engineering Trust. No individuals listed. There is a flag on the property for no unauthorized occupants." The officer's demeanor changed instantly. He stepped away from the door and rested his hand on his belt. "Ma'am," he said sternly, "you are not listed as an owner or a resident. The property belongs to a trust." Courtney froze. "That is a mistake," she stammered. "My husband, we have lived here for 5 years. It is our house." "Do you have identification with this address on it?" the officer asked. Courtney fumbled with her purse. She knew she didn't. She had kept her old address on her license to dodge student loan collectors. It is in the mail," she tried. "Look, just break the door down. I give you permission." "I cannot do that, ma'am," the officer said, stepping between her and the house. "In fact, if you do not have a key and you are not on the deed, I cannot let you enter. That would be breaking and entering." "But he is my father-in-law," she yelled, losing her composure. "We have a verified location on Mr. Walter Jefferson," the officer said, checking his screen. "He checked himself into a private facility 45 minutes ago. He is safe, and he has requested that no one disturb this property." Courtney's mouth fell open. "Safe," she whispered. "He is not inside." "No, ma'am. Now I am going to have to ask you to leave the premises. If you remain, you will be cited for trespassing." Courtney looked at the house, the fortress she thought she had conquered. She realized with a sick, sinking feeling that she was locked out. The golden goose had flown the coop and changed the locks on the way out. She screamed a sound of pure frustration and stormed toward her car, her plans crumbling into dust. Just as she reached for her door handle, a sleek black sedan pulled into the driveway, blocking her exit. The tinted window rolled down, and J.D. Harrington looked out, his silver hair gleaming under the streetlights. "Going somewhere, Mrs. Jefferson?" he asked, his voice smooth as silk. Courtney glared at him. "Move your car." "Who are you?" "I am the man who is going to explain why you are homeless," J.D. said, stepping out of the vehicle. He adjusted his suit jacket and walked up the driveway, nodding to the police officer. Officer, I am J.D. Harrington, attorney for the Vance Engineering Trust. Thank you for securing the perimeter. He turned his gaze on Courtney, who looked like a cornered animal. You seem confused about the ownership of this domicile, he said, opening his briefcase. Allow me to clarify. He pulled out a document stamped with the official seal of the county clerk. Walter Jefferson does not own this house, J.D. said. He never did. He transferred the title to the Vance Engineering Trust 20 years ago. He is the trustee. Your husband, Kendrick, was merely a tenant at will, a guest. Courtney stared at the paper. A trust, she breathed. But we sold it. We accepted an offer. J.D. chuckled, a dark, dry sound. You attempted to sell property you do not own, my dear. That is called fraud. It is a felony. And the buyers, well, when they find out the title is invalid, they are going to want their deposit back. I hope you haven't spent it. Courtney leaned against her car, looking like she might faint. But we live here. You cannot just kick us out. We have rights. J.D. tapped the document. Tenant at will, he repeated. That tenancy was terminated for cause as of this afternoon, the cause being attempted elder abuse and conspiracy to defraud the trustee. He checked his watch, a gold Rolex that probably cost more than Courtney's car. You have 1 hour to remove your personal effects. After that, the biometric locks will be reset to a new frequency, and anything left inside becomes the property of the trust to cover unpaid rent and damages. Unpaid rent, she shrieked. We lived here for free. That was a courtesy, J.D. said coldly. A courtesy that has been revoked. I suggest you start packing. The clock is ticking. Courtney looked at the police officer, who nodded in agreement with the lawyer. She looked at the house. She realized she had been playing checkers while I was playing three-dimensional chess. She scrambled past J.D., running toward the house to grab whatever she could carry before her life was locked away forever. While Courtney was frantically stuffing designer clothes into garbage bags, Kendrick was speeding toward downtown Chicago. He had used a tracking app on our shared family plan to locate my phone. The blip on his screen was pulsing right on top of the Ritz-Carlton. He parked his car illegally in the loading zone and sprinted into the hotel lobby. He looked deranged, his hospital gown tucked into jeans he had grabbed from the back seat, his eyes wild with a mixture of withdrawal and rage. "Where is he?" Kendrick shouted, startling a couple checking in at the front desk. "Where is Walter Jefferson, sir?" the concierge said, stepping forward. "Please keep your voice down." "Do not tell me what to do!" Kendrick yelled, pushing past a bellhop. "My father is here. He is a senile old man. He stole my money. He is spending my inheritance on a hotel room he cannot afford." He scanned the lobby, his eyes landing on the elevators. "He is up there, isn't he?" "Spending my money." He lunged toward the elevators. Security guards moved to intercept him, but Kendrick was fueled by desperation. He shoved one guard aside and scrambled for the buttons. Suddenly, a hand grabbed him by the shoulder. It wasn't a guard. It was the hotel manager, Mr. Sterling, a man I had known for 30 years. Mr. Sterling spun Kendrick around with surprising strength. "That is enough," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Let me go!" Kendrick screamed, struggling. "You are helping him steal from me. He is my father. He needs to be in a home. He is mentally unstable." Mr. Sterling did not flinch. He looked at Kendrick with a look of profound pity and disgust. "We know exactly who Mr. Jefferson is, son," the manager said. "And we know who you are. The ungrateful child." Kendrick stopped struggling for a second, confused by the manager's tone. "He is spending his retirement money," Kendrick spat. "He is going to bankrupt the family." Mr. Sterling laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "You really do not know, do you? Know what?" Kendrick demanded. "Your father is not a guest here, Kendrick," Mr. Sterling said, leaning in close. "Walter Jefferson owns this building." Kendrick froze. "What?" he whispered. "He owns the Ritz-Carlton Chicago," Mr. Sterling clarified, "and the land it sits on, and the engineering firm that built it. He is not spending your inheritance. He is checking up on his investment." Kendrick's jaw dropped. He looked around the opulent lobby, the marble floors, the gold-leaf ceiling. "He owns this." Mr. Sterling nodded. "And as the owner, he has the right to refuse service to anyone." The manager signaled to the security guards. "Mr. Jefferson has barred you from the premises. Remove him, and if he returns, call the police." Two large guards grabbed Kendrick by the arms. He didn't fight them. He was too stunned. He went limp, his legs dragging on the polished floor as they hauled him toward the revolving doors. He looked up at the ceiling toward the penthouse suite where I was sitting with a glass of wine. He finally understood. He hadn't just tried to rob an old man. He had tried to rob a king. And the king had just closed the castle gates. The elevator doors to the penthouse suite slid open with a soft chime, revealing Courtney standing there looking like a woman who had just walked through a hurricane. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup was smeared, and she was clutching her purse like a life raft. She stepped into the foyer of my suite, her eyes scanning the marble floors, the gold fixtures, the panoramic view of the Chicago skyline. I could see the gears turning in her head. She was recalculating everything she thought she knew about me. The old man she had tried to bully into a nursing home was actually the king of the castle, and she had just stormed the gates only to find out she was on the wrong side of the moat. She did not scream this time. She did not threaten. She collapsed. It was a theatrical fall, dropping to her knees on the Persian rug, her hands covering her face as she broke into loud, heaving sobs. "Oh, Walter," she wailed, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine terror. "Thank God you are safe. I was so worried. I did not know what to do." I sat in my leather armchair, watching her performance with a cold detachment. I took a sip of my sparkling water and waited. I wanted to see how far she would go. She crawled toward me on her hands and knees, reaching out as if to touch the hem of my pants. "Please, you have to believe me," she cried, looking up with tear-filled eyes. "It was Kendrick. It was all Kendrick. He made me do it." I raised an eyebrow. "He made you?" I asked, my voice flat. "Yes," she sobbed, nodding vigorously. "He is sick, Walter. He is on drugs. You saw the report. He has been terrorizing me for months. He threatened to hurt me if I did not help him get the house. He said he would kill me if I told you the truth." She grabbed my hand, her grip clammy and desperate. "I was trying to protect you," she lied, her eyes wide and pleading. "I called the police to the house because I was afraid he had done something to you. I wanted to get you away from him. That is why I wanted you in the nursing home, to keep you safe from his rage." It was a masterful pivot. In a matter of seconds, she had rewritten history, turning herself from the villain into the victim. She was painting Kendrick as a violent monster, and herself as the dutiful daughter-in-law held hostage by his addiction. "I wanted to leave him," she continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. "But I was scared. I stayed to protect Olivia. I stayed to protect you, and when I found out you owned all of this," she gestured around the room, "I knew you were the only one who could save us. You have the power, Walter. You have the resources. Please help me get away from him. I am your family. I am the mother of your grandchild. Do not let him destroy me like he tried to destroy you." She buried her face in my lap, sobbing uncontrollably. It was pathetic. It was disgusting. And it was exactly what I expected from a woman whose loyalty was dictated by the balance in a bank account. I let her cry for a moment, feeling the dampness of her tears on my leg. I looked down at the top of her head, wondering how someone could be so hollow. She did not care about me. She did not care about Kendrick. She cared about the penthouse. She cared about the safety net I now represented. I reached out and picked up a manila envelope from the side table. It was thick, heavy with the evidence my private investigator had compiled over the last 48 hours. I gently pushed Courtney away from me. She looked up hopeful, thinking I was reaching for my checkbook. "Get up, Courtney," I said. She stood up, wiping her face, smoothing her skirt, trying to regain some semblance of dignity now that she thought she had hooked me. "Thank you, Walter," she sniffled. "I knew you would understand. Kendrick is a monster. We need to stick together." I held out the envelope. "Open it," I said. She frowned, confused. "What is this?" she asked, taking it from my hand. "Just open it," I repeated. She undid the clasp and slid the contents out. Photographs spilled onto the coffee table. Glossy, high-resolution prints taken with a long-range lens. Courtney's face went white. Her hands started to shake so hard she dropped the remaining photos. I watched her stare at the images. There she was, sitting at a romantic corner table in a French bistro. Across from her was a man with silver hair and a deep tan. Dr. Pierce, the plastic surgeon she had been seeing for Botox treatments. But they were not discussing forehead wrinkles. In the next photo, they were holding hands. In the one after that, they were kissing in the front seat of his Porsche. And then there were the documents, copies of emails, business plans. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "You were not trying to protect me, Courtney," I said, my voice low and hard. "And you were not trying to pay off Kendrick's debts." I pointed to a document on the table. "That is an investment prospectus for a luxury medical spa in Miami. You and Dr. Pierce are listed as the primary partners. The buy-in capital required was exactly $500,000. I looked her in the eye. That is the value of my house, Courtney. You were not selling my home to save your husband. You were selling it to fund your escape with your boyfriend. Courtney stared at the photos, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The victim act evaporated instantly, replaced by the raw panic of a woman caught red-handed. Walter, I can explain, she stammered, backing away. It is not what it looks like. He was helping me with a business idea. I picked up another photo. This one showed them entering a hotel room. Does his business advice require you to check into the Four Seasons for the afternoon? I asked. She fell silent. There was no spinning this. There was no lie big enough to cover the truth staring her in the face. She had played Kendrick for a fool, and she had tried to play me for a corpse. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs. You are a fraud, Courtney. You committed adultery. You conspired to commit elder abuse. You attempted to defraud a trust. And you did it all while eating my food and living under my roof. I took a sip of my water. My lawyer, JD, has already drafted the criminal complaint. We have the emails where you discussed declaring me incompetent so you could liquidate the assets faster. We have the texts to Dr. Pierce where you call me a stubborn old goat who needs to die already. Courtney began to tremble violently. She looked at the door, then back at me. She realized she was trapped. Please, she whispered. I will go to jail. Yes, I said. You will. Fraud. Embezzlement. Conspiracy. You are looking at 10 to 15 years. And Dr. Pierce, well, when the medical board sees these emails, he will lose his license. Your lover will be destitute. She dropped to her knees again, but this time it wasn't an act. She was terrified. Walter, please. I will do anything. Anything. Just do not send me to prison. I have a daughter. Olivia needs me. I looked at her. She was right about one thing. She had a daughter she had taught to lie and cheat. I do not want you in prison, Courtney. Not yet. She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. What do you mean? She asked. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. I have a use for you, I said. I turned back to face her. Kendrick is going to fight this. He is going to sue me for support. He is going to try to claim he has rights to the trust. He is going to drag this out in court and try to paint me as the villain. I walked over to her and loomed over her kneeling form. I need a witness, Courtney. I need someone who was in the room when he planned it all. Someone who heard him say he wanted me dead. Someone who can testify to his drug use, his gambling, his threats. Her eyes widened as she understood what I was asking. You want me to testify against him? She whispered. Against my husband. Ex-husband, I corrected her. You threw him to the wolves at the hospital, remember? You ran away. Now I am giving you a chance to keep running. I crouched down so I was eye level with her. Here is the deal. You agree to testify for me in the upcoming guardianship hearing. You tell the judge everything. The drugs, the gambling, the plan to force me into the home. You corroborate every single piece of evidence I have. And in exchange, she asked breathlessly, in exchange, I will hold off on filing the fraud charges against you, I said. I will keep these photos in my safe. I will let you walk away. Broke, yes. But free. Courtney looked at the photos on the table. She looked at the luxury of the suite, the power I now wielded. She thought about Kendrick sitting in a jail cell, broke and angry. She thought about Dr. Pierce, who would surely dump her the moment this scandal broke. She had no allies. She had no money. She had only one card left to play. Betrayal. She wiped her face and stood up. The tears stopped instantly. Her face hardened into a mask of survival. Okay, she said, her voice steady. I will do it. I will tell them whatever you want. I do not want you to lie, I said, standing up. I want you to tell the truth, for the first time in your life. I will tell the truth, she promised. I will bury him, Walter. I will make sure he never gets a dime of your money. I looked at her with disgust. She was selling out her husband to save herself just like she had tried to sell out me. She had no loyalty, no honor. She was a mercenary. But right now, she was my mercenary. Good, I said. JD will be in touch with your deposition schedule. Now get out of my sight. Courtney gathered her purse. She did not look at the photos again. She walked to the door, her head held high, already practicing her new role as the repentant whistleblower. "Thank you, Walter," she said, her hand on the doorknob. "Do not thank me," I said, turning my back on her. "Just remember who holds the leash." The door clicked shut. I was alone again. I felt dirty. I had just made a deal with the devil, but I knew it was necessary. Kendrick was my son, but he had become a cancer. And sometimes to cut out a cancer, you have to use a dirty knife. I picked up the photo of Courtney and Dr. Pierce and tossed it into the fireplace. I watched the edges curl and blacken as the flames consumed their secret. Phase 1 was complete. The alliance was broken. The enemy was divided. Now it was time for Phase 2. It was time to let Kendrick know that he wasn't just fighting his father. He was fighting his own wife. And he was going to lose. The decline of Kendrick Jefferson was not a slow fade, it was a cliff dive. Without the function of a healthy kidney, his body became a prison of accumulating toxins. His skin took on a sallow gray pallor like old parchment, and his eyes were sunken deep into his skull, surrounded by bruises that looked like they had been painted on with charcoal. The energy he had used to scream at me in the hospital, to fight the police, to rage against the world had evaporated, leaving behind a trembling shell of a man who could barely walk a block without gasping for air. The medical system, which he had tried to manipulate, slammed its doors in his face one by one. The letter from the United Network for Organ Sharing arrived at his temporary address, a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city where he was burning through the last of his cash. It was a formal notification of his permanent removal from the transplant list. He was blacklisted, flagged as a high-risk patient with a history of substance abuse and non-compliance. No hospital in the country would touch him. He tried to go to the dialysis centers, the ones with heated chairs and individual televisions that he was used to. But his insurance had been revoked retroactively due to the fraud investigation initiated by the hospital. When he presented his card, the receptionist simply shook her head. No coverage meant no treatment unless he could pay $300 a session up front. Kendrick didn't have $300. He didn't have $3. He was forced to go to the county hospital emergency room, the only place that couldn't legally turn him away. He sat in plastic chairs for 12 hours at a time, surrounded by the destitute and the desperate, waiting for a spot on a machine just to clean his blood enough to keep him alive for another 2 days. He was treated not as a priority, but as a statistic, a junkie who blew his chance. The nurses looked at him with indifference. The doctors barely spoke to him. He was alone in a crowded room, dying by inches, while the city outside went on without him. He tried to call Courtney, but her number was disconnected. He tried to call his friends, the ones he had partied with the night before the surgery, but they had vanished like smoke the moment the money ran out. He was learning the hardest lesson of his life, that his value to the world had been entirely transactional, and now that his account was overdrawn, he was worthless. But desperation is a powerful motivator. It can make a man do things he would never dream of. It can make him forget his pride, his dignity, and his shame. Kendrick knew there was only one person left who could save him, one person with the resources to make the problem go away. Me. He began to stalk me. He didn't have the money for a private investigator, but he knew my routine. He knew I kept a rigorous schedule even in retirement. And he knew where I was staying. It was a Tuesday evening, a week after I had checked into the Ritz-Carlton. I had just finished a meeting with the board of directors of my engineering firm, a meeting where I had reassumed my position as chairman. I felt invigorated. The pain in my side was fading, replaced by the thrill of being back in control. I took the private elevator down to the secure parking garage. My driver Michael was waiting by the limousine, the engine idling softly. The garage was brightly lit, clean and silent, a fortress of concrete and steel. I stepped out of the elevator, leaning on my cane, more for effect than necessity now. Michael opened the rear door for me. Just as I was about to slide into the leather interior, a figure lunged from the shadows between two parked SUVs. "Pop, wait." Michael moved instantly, stepping between me and the intruder, his hand reaching inside his jacket. But I put a hand on Michael's arm to stop him. "It is all right, Michael," I said, my voice echoing in the cavernous space. "I know him." Kendrick stood 10 feet away. He looked like a specter. His clothes were dirty, hanging off his skeletal frame. His hair was matted. He was shaking violently, either from the cold or the uremia poisoning his blood. He dropped to his knees on the concrete floor. He didn't care about the oil stains or the grit. He clasped his hands together in a gesture of prayer. "Pop, please," he rasped, his voice wet and weak. "You have to help me. I am dying." I stood by the open car door looking down at him. I felt a pang of pity, but it was distant, like watching a sad scene in a movie. You made your choices, Kendrick, I said. You chose the party over the surgery. You chose the drugs over the kidney. I know, he sobbed, crawling forward on his knees. I was stupid. I was an idiot. But I do not want to die, Pop. Look at me. I cannot breathe. My skin itches all the time. I cannot eat. He looked up at me, his eyes wide and bloodshot. You have money, Pop. I know you do. Everyone knows now. You own this hotel. You own the company. You have millions. What do you want, Kendrick? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Buy me one, he whispered. The words hung in the air, heavy and grotesque. Buy you what I asked, a kidney, he said, his voice raising in pitch. You can do it. I know people. There are doctors overseas, in China, in India, or even here if you pay enough. There are brokers. You can buy a kidney from someone. You can pay a doctor to look the other way. He scrambled closer, reaching out to grab the hem of my coat. Michael stepped forward again, blocking him. Just write a check, Pop Kendrick pleaded, talking to Michael's chest. 100,000, 200. It is nothing to you. You can save me. You can buy me a life. I looked at my son, and I felt a wave of nausea. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't asking for redemption. He was asking me to become a criminal. He wanted me to participate in the black market organ trade, to exploit some poor, desperate soul who needed cash, just so he could continue his wasted existence. He had learned nothing. He still believed that money was the answer to every problem. He still believed that rules were for other people. I stepped around Michael and stood directly in front of Kendrick. He looked up, hope flaring in his eyes, thinking he had broken me. Stand up, Kendrick, I said. He scrambled to his feet, swaying unsteadily. You will do it, he asked, a smile trembling on his cracked lips. You will help me. I looked him up and down. I looked at the man who had been my pride and joy and saw only a stranger. I already gave you a kidney, Kendrick, I said, my voice low and hard. I gave you my own flesh and blood. I lay on a table and let them cut me open for you. And you took that gift, that priceless gift, and you threw it in the trash along with your conscience. Kendrick's smile faltered. But that is gone, Pop. That is in the past. We have to move forward. Forward, I repeated. You want me to move forward by becoming a monster. You want me to traffic in human parts. You want me to buy a piece of another human being because you were too irresponsible to keep the one I gave you. I shook my head slowly. No, Kendrick. Kendrick's face crumpled. But I will die, he wailed. Then you will die with your integrity intact, I said. Or what is left of it. I turned my back on him and got into the car. The heavy door thudded shut, sealing me inside the bulletproof cocoon. The silence was instant. The air was cool and filtered. Kendrick threw himself at the window. He pounded on the glass, his mouth moving in silent screams. He pressed his face against the tint, his eyes wild and accusing. He was mouthing the words over and over. You have the money. You have the money. I looked at him through the thick glass. He looked like a ghost haunting the living. I pressed the intercom button. My voice was amplified, booming out into the garage. I have the money, Kendrick, I said. But I do not have a son. Not anymore. I signaled Michael to drive. The car pulled away smoothly, gliding across the concrete. Kendrick tried to run alongside us for a few yards, banging on the fender, but he was too weak. He stumbled and fell, rolling onto the ground. I watched him in the rearview mirror as he lay there, a small heap of rags in the empty garage. He pounded the floor with his fists, screaming at the taillights. He wanted me to bribe the law. He wanted me to play God. But I was done playing games. I had given him life once. I had tried to give it to him twice. He had rejected it both times. Now he had to live or die with the consequences. As the limousine emerged into the bright sunlight of the Chicago afternoon, I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away quickly. I had cut out the rot. The wound was cauterized. Now it was time to heal. But the infection was deep, and Kendrick wasn't the only one who needed to learn a lesson. I picked up the phone. It was time for the next phase. It was time to deal with the lawsuit, and this time I wouldn't be hiding behind tinted glass. I would be standing front and center. The courtroom smelled of lemon polish and stale anxiety. It was a smell I had grown used to over 40 years of construction litigation. But today the air felt heavier, thicker. I sat at the defense table, my hands resting on the cool mahogany, my posture straight despite the lingering ache in my side. Next to me, J.D. Harrington was arranging his papers with the calm precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. He did not look worried. He looked bored. Across the aisle, Kendrick sat next to a lawyer I recognized from billboards near the highway. The man's suit was too shiny and his tie was too loud. Kendrick looked better than he had in the parking garage. Someone had cleaned him up, put him in a suit that was a size too big, and combed his hair. But they could not hide the tremors in his hands or the yellowish tint of his skin. He was dying, and instead of seeking peace, he was seeking control. He was suing me. The audacity of it was almost impressive. The filing was for abandonment of a dependent and emergency guardianship. His argument was a masterpiece of fiction. He claimed that the trauma of the surgery combined with the anesthesia and my advanced age had caused a psychotic break. He claimed I was mentally incompetent. He cited my sudden move to the Ritz-Carlton and my refusal to pay for his life-saving medical bills as proof that I was no longer capable of managing my own affairs. He wanted control of the Vance Engineering Trust. He wanted to be my guardian. He wanted to lock me away in a facility where he could sign checks in my name while I drooled in a corner. Kendrick's lawyer stood up, buttoning his jacket. He walked toward the judge, a stern woman named Judge Abernathy, who was known for her zero tolerance for nonsense. "Your Honor," the lawyer began, his voice dripping with fake concern, "we are here today to protect a vulnerable senior citizen. Mr. Walter Jefferson is a man who has lost his way. In his confused state, he has abandoned his only son, his dependent, who is currently suffering from end-stage renal failure. We are asking the court to grant Kendrick Jefferson temporary conservatorship to ensure his father's assets are not squandered on five-star hotels while his family suffers." Kendrick dabbed at his eyes with a tissue. It was a nice touch. I watched him, and I felt nothing. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. All that was left was a cold clinical observation. I was watching a building collapse in slow motion, and I was the one who had planted the charges. Judge Abernathy looked over her glasses at me. "Mr. Harrington," she said, "does the defense have an opening statement?" JD did not stand up immediately. He took a sip of water. He checked his watch. Then he slowly rose to his full height, towering over Kendrick's cheap lawyer. "We do not have an opening statement, Your Honor," JD said, his voice deep and resonating off the wood-paneled walls. "We believe that the plaintiff's claims regarding my client's mental state and the nature of their relationship are best addressed by looking at the facts." He picked up a small remote control from the table. "The plaintiff claims Mr. Jefferson is confused. He claims Mr. Jefferson is the one who abandoned him. He claims he is a loving son trying to protect his father." JD walked to the center of the room. "We would like to submit into evidence Defense Exhibit A. This is security footage from the recovery room at Chicago Memorial Hospital taken 3 days ago." Kendrick's head snapped up. He looked at his lawyer, who looked confused. They didn't know. They thought it was just my word against his. They forgot that I build high-security facilities for a living. "I know where the cameras are." "Objection," Kendrick's lawyer stammered. "We have not seen this footage." "It was submitted to the clerk this morning," Counsel JD said smoothly. "Perhaps if you checked your email instead of your voicemail, you would know that." Judge Abernathy waved her hand. "Play it." The large screen on the wall flickered to life. The image was grainy black and white, but the picture was unmistakable. There I was, lying in the hospital bed, looking weak and vulnerable. And there was Kendrick standing over me. The audio kicked in. It was crisp and clear. "Sign it," he hissed. "Do it now so we can get on with our lives. You had your time. Now it is our turn." The courtroom went deadly silent. On the screen, Kendrick grabbed my wrist. The violence of the movement made the stenographer gasp. "Just sign it, old man," he growled on the recording. I looked at Kendrick in the courtroom. He was gripping the table so hard his knuckles were white. He was watching his own soul being exposed on a 60-inch screen. The video continued. It showed him jamming the pen into my hand. It showed the cruelty in his eyes. "You are weak," the Kendrick on the screen whispered. "You are finished." And then the line that sealed his fate, the line that hung in the air of the courtroom like a toxic cloud. "Bury him alive." Courtney's voice cut in from the recording, though she wasn't on screen, and Kendrick's response, "He is useless now, JD." Paused the video on a frame where Kendrick's face was twisted into a snarl of pure greed. "Your Honor," JD said softly, "this is the man who claims he wants to protect his father. This is the man who claims he was abandoned. This footage was taken hours after my client underwent major surgery to save this man's life. A surgery that was canceled because the plaintiff was high on cocaine." JD turned to look at Kendrick. This is not a son concerned for his father. This is a predator angry that his prey woke up. Kendrick's lawyer was packing his briefcase. He knew it was over. He was already mentally calculating how to exit the room without making eye contact with the judge. Judge Abernathy stared at the frozen image on the screen. Then she turned her gaze to Kendrick. Her face was a mask of controlled fury. In her 20 years on the bench, she had seen liars, thieves, and murderers. But there is a special place in hell for children who abuse their parents, and she was looking at the gatekeeper. "Mr. Jefferson," she said, her voice dangerously low. "Stand up." Kendrick tried to stand, but his legs would not work. He slumped in his chair, shaking his head. "I said, stand up," she barked, slamming her gavel down. Kendrick scrambled to his feet, leaning on the table for support. He looked small. He looked pathetic. "In all my years," Judge Abernathy said, picking up the file in front of her, "I have never seen a petition so frivolous, so malicious, and so morally bankrupt. You come into my court asking for control over a man you physically assaulted in his hospital bed. You ask for equity from a man you tried to defraud." She threw the file down. "The petition for guardianship is denied with prejudice. The lawsuit for abandonment is dismissed." She wasn't done. She looked at the bailiff standing by the door. "Bailiff, please secure the courtroom. No one leaves." Kendrick looked around, panic rising in his chest. Why, he squeaked. "Because Judge Abernathy," said, her eyes blazing, "I am holding you in direct criminal contempt for filing a false pleading. But that is just the appetizer." She turned to the court reporter. "I want a certified copy of this video sent to the district attorney's office within the hour. I am formally recommending that charges be filed against Kendrick Jefferson for elder abuse, attempted extortion, and assault." She looked back at Kendrick. "You wanted a judgment, Mr. Jefferson. You got one. You are not a victim. You are a criminal. And you are going to be treated like one." Kendrick made a noise like a dying engine. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for me to intervene, to save him one last time. "Pop," he whispered. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had tried to bury me. I stood up, slowly buttoning my jacket. I did not look away. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady. "Thank you." I turned and walked toward the aisle. "Pop, wait!" Kendrick screamed as the bailiff moved toward him with handcuffs. "Do not leave me here. I am sick. I need help." I stopped at the gate. I turned back one last time. "You need a lawyer, Kendrick," I said. "A better one." I walked out of the courtroom. Behind me I heard the click of handcuffs and the sobbing of a man who had finally run out of other people to blame. JD walked beside me, his stride matching mine. "That went well," he said dryly. "It went exactly as engineered," I said. But I felt no joy. I felt no triumph. I just felt a heavy finality. The demolition was almost complete. The structure was coming down. Now I just had to sweep up the rubble. 3 days after Kendrick was dragged out of the courtroom in handcuffs, Courtney showed up at my door. I was sitting in the lounge of the presidential suite reviewing the architectural plans for a new community center I was funding in the South Side. The morning sun was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathing the room in golden light. But when Courtney walked in, she brought a cold shadow with her. She looked different than the last time I had seen her. The polished veneer of the high-end real estate agent was gone. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun that highlighted the gaunt angles of her face, and her designer suit looked like it had been slept in. She had lost her job that morning. My private investigator had told me the news an hour ago. The real estate brokerage she worked for had fired her for cause, citing the reputational damage from the fraud investigation and the viral nature of the court case. She was toxic. No one in Chicago would hire her to sell a doghouse, let alone a mansion. She stood in the foyer, clutching her purse with white-knuckled intensity. She did not kneel this time. She did not cry. She looked at me with the hungry, desperate eyes of a wolf that had been kicked out of the pack and was looking for a fresh kill. "I did what you asked," she said, her voice raspy. "I went to court. I testified. I told the judge everything about the drugs and the gambling. I buried him, Walter, just like we agreed." I set down my pen and looked at her. She was right. She had been a star witness. She had dissected Kendrick's character on the stand with the precision of a surgeon. She had detailed every lie, every theft, every threat. She had ensured that the father of her child would spend the next decade in prison. And she had done it without a single tear. It was the coldest performance I had ever seen. "You did your part," I acknowledged, leaning back in my chair. "You were very thorough. I saved your fortune, she said, stepping closer. If I had not testified, he might have gotten something. He might have gotten sympathy. I made sure the judge saw him as a monster. She paused, waiting for me to praise her. When I said nothing, she continued, her voice taking on a demanding edge. Now it is time for my reward. I held up my end of the bargain. I destroyed my husband for you. I lost my job because of this trial. My name is mud in this town. I have nothing left, Walter. I need to start over. I need to leave Chicago. She held out her hand, palm up. You promised me, she said. You said if I helped you, there would be a settlement. You said you would take care of me. I looked at her hand. It was steady, greedy. She expected a check with 6 zeros. She thought she had earned a golden parachute for pulling the ripcord on her marriage. She thought that betraying Kendrick made her my ally. She did not understand that to me, she was just another symptom of the disease that had infected my family. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and pulled out my checkbook. It was a long, leather-bound book, the kind used for business accounts. The kind that signifies serious money. Courtney's eyes locked onto it. Her breathing hitched. I could see the calculations running behind her eyes. She was already spending the money. A condo in Miami, a new car, a new face. She was already planning her next con. Sit down, Courtney, I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. She sat on the edge of the seat, her body leaning forward, drawn by the magnetic pull of the checkbook. I appreciate what you did in court, I said, opening the book and smoothing down the page. It required a certain kind of strength to turn on your partner like that. It was justice, she said quickly, trying to wrap her greed in a moral flag. He deserved it. He was a bad man. He was a bad man, I agreed, picking up my fountain pen. But he was also the man you chose, the man you enabled. You spent his money when he was stealing from me. You enjoyed the lifestyle his lies provided. You only turned on him when the money ran out. Courtney waved her hand dismissively. I was a victim too, Walter. You know that. I looked at her over the rim of my reading glasses. Are you? I asked. Or are you just a survivor? I uncapped the pen. The ink was black and permanent. Courtney licked her lips. How much, she whispered, unable to help herself. How much are you going to give me? I did not answer. I focused on the check. I wrote the date in neat block letters. I wrote her name on the payee line, Courtney Jefferson. I watched her crane her neck, trying to see the numbers I was writing in the box. I want you to know that I thought long and hard about this amount, I said as I wrote. I wanted to give you exactly what you deserve. I wanted to give you something that would change your life, something that would set you on a new path. Courtney smiled. It was a gruesome sight, a mixture of relief and avarice. Thank you, Walter, she breathed. I knew you were a generous man. I knew you would do the right thing. Olivia and I, we will be so grateful. I finished writing the amount and signed my name at the bottom with a flourish. Walter Jefferson. I tore the check out of the book. The sound was crisp and final, ripping through the silence of the room. Here you go, I said, holding it out to her. Use it wisely. Courtney snatched the check from my fingers. She held it up to the light, her eyes scanning the paper hungrily. She looked for the comma. She looked for the zeros. Her smile froze. Her eyes went wide. Her face turned a sickly shade of gray. She blinked, rubbing her eyes as if she was seeing things. She looked at the check again, bringing it closer to her face. $200, she whispered. She looked up at me, her expression transforming from greed to pure, unadulterated shock. $200. Is this a joke? Did you forget the zeros? I capped my pen and put it back in my pocket. It is not a joke, Courtney, I said calmly. It is a payment for services rendered. $200, she screamed, standing up and knocking the chair over. I testified for you. I ruined my life for you. You are a multimillionaire. This is an insult. This does not even cover a night in a hotel. I stood up slowly, towering over her. Read the memo line, Courtney, I said, pointing to the bottom left corner of the check. She looked down at the paper in her trembling hands. Ethics class tuition. She read, her voice shaking with rage. What is this? She demanded, waving the check in my face. It is exactly what it says. I replied, my voice cold and hard. There is a community college 3 blocks from here. They offer a night course on ethics and moral philosophy. The tuition is $195. The extra $5 is for a notebook. Courtney stared at me, her mouth agape. You are paying for me to go to school, she sputtered. I am paying for you to learn how to be a human being, I said. Because somewhere along the line you missed that lesson. You think betrayal has a price tag. You think loyalty is a commodity you can sell to the highest bidder. You stood in that courtroom and destroyed a man you swore to love and honor, and you did it for a payout. I walked around the desk, closing the distance between us. You are not a victim, Courtney. You are a co-conspirator who turned state's evidence. You are a rat, and rats do not get million-dollar settlements. They get scraps. She looked at the check, then at me, her face twisted into a snarl of pure hatred. You old bastard, she screamed. You used me. You tricked me. I did not trick you, I said. I promised I would not file fraud charges against you if you testified. I kept my word. You are not going to prison today. That is your payment. The check is just a bonus, a suggestion for self-improvement. She let out a shriek of frustration and ripped the check in half. She tore it into quarters, then into eighths, throwing the pieces at my face. I do not want your charity, she yelled. I want my money. I earned it. You earned nothing, I roared, my voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. You stole from me. You tried to put me in a home. You tried to sell my house. And now you stand here demanding a reward. I pressed a button on my desk. Security to the penthouse immediately, I said into the intercom. Courtney backed away, her chest heaving. You will regret this, she hissed. I will tell everyone. I will go to the press. I will tell them you manipulated me. Go ahead, I said. Tell them. Tell them you sold out your husband for cash. Tell them you forged checks. Tell them about your affair with the plastic surgeon. I have the photos, Courtney. I have the files. If you say one word to the press, I will release everything. And then you won't just be unemployed. You will be a pariah. The elevator doors opened and two large security guards stepped out. They looked at Courtney, then at me. Mr. Jefferson, is there a problem? One guard asked. This woman is trespassing, I said, adjusting my cuffs. Please escort her out of the building, and make sure she does not take anything that does not belong to her. Courtney looked at the guards, then back at me. She realized she had played her hand and lost. She had betrayed everyone in her life, and she was leaving with nothing. I hope you die alone, she spat as the guards grabbed her arms. I smiled a cold, humorless smile. I might die alone, Courtney, I said, but I will die with a clean conscience. Can you say the same? She screamed as they dragged her into the elevator. The doors closed, cutting off her curses. I looked down at the torn pieces of the check scattered on the Persian rug. $200. It was a small price to pay to find out what someone was truly worth. I called housekeeping to clean up the mess. The con artist was gone. The son was in prison. The house was secure. But there was one loose end left. One more person who needed to understand the consequences of his actions. It was time to visit the hospital. Not the pristine private hospital where I had my surgery, but the county facility. The place where people go when they have nowhere else to turn. Kendrick was waiting. And I had one final lesson to teach him. The county hospital was a place where hope went to die slowly under the hum of fluorescent lights. It was not the pristine private facility where I had undergone my surgery. It was a concrete box filled with the city's forgotten souls. The air smelled of antiseptic and unwashed bodies, a cloying scent that stuck to the back of the throat. Kendrick sat in a plastic chair in the dialysis ward. It was a large open room packed with rows of machines that whirred and clicked like a chorus of mechanical insects. There were no private rooms here, no heated blankets, no cable TV. Just a room full of people tethered to tubes, their blood cycling out of their bodies and back in a grim rhythm of survival. He looked terrible. His skin had turned the color of wet ash. His eyes were sunken dark hollows in his face. He had lost 20 pounds in the weeks since his arrest and release pending trial. His designer suit was gone, replaced by a stained sweatshirt and sweatpants that hung loosely on his frame. He was just another number in the system now. A case file. An indigent patient relying on state aid to filter the poison from his blood 3 times a week. He sat next to a man who was talking to himself, a homeless veteran who had lost his kidneys to frostbite and alcohol. On his other side was a young woman with track marks on her arms who slept through the entire 4-hour session. Kendrick tried to shrink into himself to make himself small so he would not have to acknowledge where he was. He still believed he was better than them. He still believed this was a temporary mistake, a glitch in the universe that would be corrected once he got access to my money. But the glitch was becoming his reality. The nurse, a harried woman with tired eyes, walked by checking his lines. She did not smile. She did not ask how he was feeling. She just noted the numbers on the machine and moved on. To her, he was just the guy who had screamed at the intake coordinator because they did not have his preferred brand of juice. He was a nuisance. Kendrick stared at the ceiling, counting the water stains. He was shivering. The room was freezing and he had no coat. He closed his eyes, trying to block out the sounds of coughing and the beeping monitors. He was dreaming of the Ritz-Carlton. He was dreaming of the life he had thrown away for a night of partying. Suddenly, a commotion at the front of the ward made him open his eyes. The double doors swung open and a phalanx of security guards walked in. They were not the hospital rent-a-cops. They were private security professionals in dark suits. They cleared a path through the crowded waiting area, pushing aside gurneys and chairs. Kendrick sat up straighter. His heart leaped. Had I come for him? Had I finally broken down and come to rescue him from this hellhole? He prepared a speech in his head. He would cry. He would apologize. He would do whatever it took to get out of that chair. But the security guards were not coming for him. They were lining the hallway, creating a cordon. Behind them came a group of people in expensive suits, followed by a camera crew. Reporters with microphones jostled for position. The flashes of their cameras lit up the dreary ward like lightning. And then I walked in. I was wearing a charcoal gray suit, tailor-made to fit my frame perfectly. I held my cane, but I walked with a strength that defied my age and my recent surgery. Next to me was the hospital administrator, a short, balding man who was sweating with excitement. Kendrick watched stunned as the procession moved right past his row of chairs. I did not look at him. I did not even turn my head. I walked with a purpose, heading toward the far end of the ward where a large set of double doors had been covered with a velvet curtain. Kendrick unhooked his arm from the armrest, ignoring the warning beep of the machine. He craned his neck, trying to see what was happening. "Ladies and gentlemen," the hospital administrator announced, his voice booming over the noise of the dialysis machines. "Please gather round. Today is a historic day for County General." The reporters crowded in. Patients who could walk stood up, dragging their IV poles. Even the nurses stopped working to watch. "We are honored to welcome Mr. Walter Jefferson," the administrator continued, gesturing to me. "A titan of industry and a philanthropist who has not forgotten his roots." Kendrick's mouth fell open. Philanthropist. I stepped up to the podium that had been set up in front of the velvet curtain. I adjusted the microphone. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the pain. I saw the suffering. And way in the back, I saw my son staring at me with a mixture of confusion and hunger. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. I looked at the curtain. "My wife, Sarah, died of kidney failure 15 years ago," I began. "She spent her last days in a room very much like this one. She was a woman of dignity and grace, and she deserved better." I paused, letting the memory of her wash over me. She deserved privacy. She deserved comfort. She deserved the best technology available. But we were young then, and we did not have the resources. I looked back at the crowd. I made a promise to her memory. I promised that if I ever had the means, I would ensure that no one else would have to suffer the way she did just because they were poor. I signaled to the security guards. They pulled the cord. The velvet curtain fell away, revealing a gleaming glass wall. Behind it was a new wing, a state-of-the-art dialysis center. It looked like a 5-star hotel. There were private pods with comfortable recliners, individual entertainment systems, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a garden. The equipment was brand new, the latest technology from Germany. "I present to you the Sarah Jefferson Renal Care Center," I said. The crowd gasped. The patients looked at the new wing with longing. It was beautiful. It was a paradise compared to the dungeon they were currently in. "This facility is free," I announced. "It is open to any resident of this county who cannot afford private care. It is fully funded by the Vance Engineering Trust in perpetuity." Applause broke out. Nurses wiped tears from their eyes. Patients cheered. But I wasn't finished. However, I added, raising my hand to silence the room. "There is one condition for admission." The room went quiet. "This facility is a sanctuary," I said, my voice hardening. "It is for those who value their lives. Therefore, strict adherence to the United Network for Organ Sharing Protocols is required. Any patient with a documented history of substance abuse or non-compliance with transplant regulations will not be admitted." I looked directly at the back of the room. I locked eyes with Kendrick. "We do not waste resources on those who throw them away," I said. The realization hit Kendrick like a physical blow. He was excluded. He was banned. The paradise I had built was for everyone except him. The clause was written specifically for him. He was the only person in the room who didn't qualify. He stood up. The dialysis lines tugged at his arm, but he didn't care. He ripped the tape off his arm, tearing the needles out. Blood spurted onto his dirty sweatshirt, but he didn't stop. He pushed his way through the crowd of patients. He shoved a nurse aside. "You cannot do this," he screamed, his voice cracking. The cameras turned toward the commotion. The reporters, sensing a story, swung their microphones toward the disheveled, bleeding man charging toward the podium. Kendrick stumbled into the open space in front of the stage. He looked wild, maniacal. Blood was running down his arm, dripping onto the polished floor of the New Wing's entrance. "Look at me," he shrieked, pointing at his chest. "I am dying." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "That man is my father," he yelled at the cameras. "That is Walter Jefferson. He is a billionaire. He has millions of dollars. And he is leaving his own son to rot in a county hospital while he builds palaces for strangers." The reporters gasped. Flashbulbs went off in a blinding frenzy. A reporter from Channel 5 thrust a microphone into Kendrick's face. "Is this true, sir? Are you his son?" "Yes, I am his son," Kendrick cried, tears cutting tracks through the grime on his face. "He is doing this to spite me. He hates me. He is a monster. How can you call him a hero? He is letting his own flesh and blood die." He looked at me, his eyes pleading for the public to turn on me, to shame me into saving him. "Dad," he sobbed, "please, I am sorry. Let me in. Let me into the center. Do not leave me out here with the rats." The room was silent. All eyes turned to me. The hero of the hour was now the villain in a family tragedy. The cameras zoomed in on my face, waiting for a reaction, waiting for the guilt, but they waited in vain. I stepped down from the podium. I walked toward Kendrick until I was only a few feet away. I looked at the blood on his arm. I looked at the desperation in his soul. I reached out and took the microphone from the reporter. I looked into the lens of the camera broadcasting live to the entire city. "This man claims to be my son," I said, my voice calm and clear. I turned to Kendrick. "He claims I am letting him die, but the truth is, I gave him life, twice." I unbuttoned my jacket and lifted my shirt. I revealed the fresh, angry scar on my right side. The staples were still in. The flesh was still healing. "I gave this man my kidney," I said. I lay on an operating table and cut a piece of myself out to save him. The crowd murmured. Kendrick flinched. And 3 days ago I continued. On the morning of the surgery, he tested positive for cocaine. He disqualified himself from the transplant list. He threw my kidney away. The murmur turned into a roar of shock and disgust. The sympathy in the room evaporated instantly. "He tried to force me into a nursing home while I was recovering," I said, my voice rising over the noise. "He tried to steal my home. He tried to defraud my trust." I looked at Kendrick. He was shrinking under the weight of the truth. "He is not a victim," I said. "He is a man who made a choice. He chose drugs over life. He chose greed over family." I handed the microphone back to the reporter. "I have no son named Kendrick," I declared. "The boy I raised died the moment he decided to betray me. The man standing before you is a stranger, and I do not owe strangers anything." Kendrick fell to his knees. He sobbed, broken and exposed. The cameras captured every second of his humiliation. "Security," I said. "Please remove this man. He is bleeding on my floor." 2 guards stepped forward. They lifted Kendrick up by his arms. He didn't fight. He just hung there weeping as they carried him out of the light and back into the darkness of the old ward. I turned back to the crowd. I buttoned my jacket. "Shall we cut the ribbon?" I asked. The applause was deafening. It wasn't just for the building, it was for justice. I picked up the giant scissors. I looked at the red ribbon. Snip. It was done. I had severed the last tie. Kendrick was gone, but the war wasn't quite over. There was one last enemy lurking in the shadows, someone who had been watching from the sidelines, waiting for a moment of weakness. And unlike Kendrick, this enemy was smart. This enemy was dangerous. I walked into the new center surrounded by admirers, but my eyes were scanning the perimeter. I knew he was out there, and I was ready. The call came on a disposable burner phone that Kendrick had bought with the last of his pawnshop cash. The voice on the other end was smooth-cultured and dripping with malice. It belonged to Silas Thorne, a man I had crushed in a bidding war for the city's municipal contract 10 years ago. Thorne had never forgiven me. He had lost his company, his reputation, and his fortune because I had exposed his use of substandard steel in a bridge project. He had been waiting in the shadows, watching my family crumble, waiting for the perfect pawn to enter the board. Kendrick met him in the back booth of a dive bar on the south side. Thorne did not look like a ruined man. He wore a suit that cost more than Kendrick's life was currently worth. He slid a black leather case across the sticky table. Inside was a 9mm handgun and a single sheet of paper with an address. "Your father destroyed us both," Kendrick Thorne said, his voice low. "He took your kidney. He took your inheritance. And he took my legacy. It is time we took something back." Kendrick stared at the gun. His hands were shaking not from fear, but from the uremic toxins building up in his blood. He was dying, and he blamed me for every second of his suffering. "What do I do?" he asked, picking up the heavy cold weapon. "We take him to the site," Thorne explained. "An abandoned project on the riverfront. It is isolated, soundproof. We make him sign the irrevocable transfer of the trust. Then we make sure he never cancels it." Kendrick looked up, his eyes yellow and wild. "You mean kill him?" Thorne smiled a shark-like grin. "I mean, we solve the problem permanently." Kendrick gripped the gun. He felt a surge of power he hadn't felt in months. He wasn't a victim anymore. He was an executioner. "I am in," he whispered. The trap was sprung 2 nights later. I received a text message from J.D. Harrington's personal number. It was a distress code we had set up years ago. "Meet at the ironworks site. Urgent. Security breach." I knew immediately it was a fake. J.D. was sitting in my suite having a brandy. His phone had been cloned. It was a sophisticated hack, something only a professional like Thorne could pull off. I looked at the message. The ironworks site. It was a 40-story skeleton of steel and concrete that had been halted due to zoning issues. A ghost tower looming over the Chicago River. I showed the message to J.D. "They are making their move," I said, standing up and buttoning my coat. "Walter, do not go," J.D. warned. "It is a trap. Let the police handle it." I checked the battery on a small black remote control device I kept in my safe. It looked like a garage door opener, but it controlled something much more powerful. "I have to go, J.D., I said. "If I do not end this tonight, they will keep coming. They will hurt Olivia. They will hurt you. I need to draw them out." I took the elevator down to the garage. Michael was waiting. "To the ironworks," I said, "and stay back until I give the signal." The construction site was a cathedral of shadows and rust. The wind howled through the open girders, creating a mournful song that echoed off the concrete pillars. I walked into the main atrium, my cane tapping against the unfinished floor. The only light came from the city skyline across the river, a distant galaxy of wealth and safety that felt 1,000,000 miles away. I stopped in the center of the vast empty space. "I am here," I called out, my voice steady. A floodlight snapped on, blinding me. I raised my hand to shield my eyes. Steps echoed on the metal grating above. 2 figures descended the temporary staircase. Silas Thorne walked with the arrogance of a man who thinks he has already won. Beside him was Kendrick, looking like a walking corpse, holding the gun with 2 trembling hands. "Hello," Walter Thorne said, his voice booming. "Welcome to your retirement party." I squinted against the light. "Silas," I said. "I should have known. Only you would pick a building with structural deficiencies for a meeting." Thorne laughed. "The building is fine, Walter. It is you who is unstable." Kendrick stepped forward, leveling the gun at my chest. The barrel wavered, shaking with the rhythm of his failing body. "Sign the papers, Pop," he screamed. "Just sign them. Silas has the transfer documents. Sign them and we let you go." I looked at my son. He was sweating despite the cold wind. He looked feverish, desperate. "You know that is a lie, Kendrick," I said softly. "Silas is not going to let me go, and he is not going to let you go either. You are the loose end." "Shut up," Kendrick yelled, thumbing the hammer back. "You do not know anything. You ruined my life. You owe me this." Thorne pulled a document from his jacket. The signature, "Walter, now. Or the boy shoots. And honestly, I do not care which one it is. I get the money either way once you are both dead." Kendrick looked at Thorne, confused. "Both of us?" he asked. Thorne rolled his eyes. "Focus, Kendrick. Shoot him if he does not sign." I looked at the gun. I looked at the steel beams rising above us into the darkness. I looked at the floor beneath their feet. I did not move. I did not reach for a pen. I reached into my pocket and wrapped my fingers around the black remote. "I am not signing anything I said." Kendrick screamed a sound of pure frustration and took a step closer, crossing onto the central platform of the atrium. "Then die," he shrieked. I looked him in the eye. "Kendrick, look up. I said. He blinked, distracted. What? Look up, I repeated, pointing to the ceiling with my cane. He looked up. Thorne looked up. I designed this building, Kendrick. I said, my voice calm, authoritative. The voice of the engineer who had birthed this structure from blueprints. I drew every beam. I calculated every load. I know where the stress points are, and I know where the temporary supports are located. I pulled the remote from my pocket. You are standing on the load testing platform, I explained. It is designed to hold 50 tons of concrete, or to drop 50 tons of debris into the sub-basement. Thorne's eyes went wide. He looked down at his feet. He realized too late that the concrete slab he was standing on was separated from the main floor by a thin hairline crack. Walter, no! He shouted, reaching for Kendrick. But I had already pressed the button. A series of hydraulic clamps disengaged with a sound like a gunshot. The floor beneath them simply vanished. It wasn't a long drop, only about 15 feet into a containment pit used for debris testing, but the shock was total. Kendrick and Thorne fell screaming, disappearing into the darkness of the pit. The gun fired into the air, a harmless flash of light. They hit the safety netting below with a heavy thud, followed by the sound of groaning metal as the trap secured them. I walked to the edge of the pit and looked down. Thorne was tangled in the net, cursing. Kendrick was curled into a ball, sobbing, his gun lost in the darkness below. I designed the safety net too, I called down. I did not want you to die. I wanted you to be caught. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder by the second. Blue and red lights began to flash against the steel beams. JD had called the police the moment I left the hotel. I leaned on my cane, watching the flashing lights approach. Structure is everything, I whispered to the darkness. If the foundation is rotten, the house falls. Tonight the house had fallen, and I was the only one left standing. The visiting room at Cook County Jail was a study in gray. Gray walls, gray floors, and the gray faces of men who knew they had reached the end of the line. I sat on a metal stool bolted to the floor, my hands resting on the cold stainless steel ledge beneath the thick partition of bulletproof glass. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and stale sweat, a scent that stuck to the back of your throat and refused to leave. I waited. 10 minutes later, the heavy steel door on the other side of the glass buzzed and slid open. 2 correctional officers stepped through, followed by a figure that I barely recognized. Kendrick was in a wheelchair. He was slumped over, his head hanging low, his chin resting on his chest. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 3 sizes too big for his wasted frame. His skin was the color of old newspaper, dry and flaky. His hair, which he used to style so meticulously, was matted and thinning. He looked like a man of 80, not 35. The uremic frost on his skin glittered under the harsh fluorescent lights, a cruel jewelry for a man who had coveted gold. The guard wheeled him up to the glass and locked the wheels. Kendrick did not look up. He stared at his hands, which were cuffed to the armrests of the chair. They were trembling violently, a constant rhythmic shaking that rattled the metal. Kendrick, I said, my voice amplified by the small speaker in the partition. He slowly lifted his head. His eyes were yellow and rheumy, surrounded by dark hollows that looked like bruises. It took him a moment to focus on me. When recognition finally dawned in his gaze, it wasn't anger I saw. It wasn't greed. It was fear, pure primal fear. Pop, he croaked, his voice thin and reedy. You came. I came, I said. He leaned forward as far as the cuffs would allow. His breath fogged the glass. Get me out of here, Pop, he whispered. Please. I am dying in here. The infirmary. It is a joke. They give me Tylenol for the pain. They only dialyze me when my numbers are critical. I can feel my body shutting down. I am cold all the time. I looked at him. I looked at the son I had carried on my shoulders, the son I had taught to fish, the son I had cut myself open for. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, but I did not wipe it away. You are where you belong, Kendrick, I said softly. No, he sobbed, tears cutting tracks through the grime on his face. I do not belong here. I made a mistake. I know I made a mistake. But this is torture. He looked around the room, paranoid and desperate. Thorne, he lied to me, Pop. He said it would be easy. He said no one would get hurt. He just wanted the signature. He pressed his forehead against the glass. I was scared, Pop. I was scared of being poor. I was scared of being a failure. Courtney. She was always in my ear, telling me I wasn't good enough, telling me we needed more. I just wanted to be like you. I wanted to be a success. You wanted the result, Kendrick, I said. You never wanted the work. I know, he cried, his shoulders heaving. I know. I was weak. I was stupid. But I am sorry. I am so sorry. For the kidney. For the house. For the gun. For everything. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. I love you, Pop. I really do. Please. You have the money. You have the lawyers. Get me out. Put me in a private hospital. Let me die in a real bed. Do not let me die in a cage. I listened to his confession. It was real. For the first time in years, he wasn't trying to manipulate me. He wasn't trying to scam me. He was stripping his soul bare, admitting his faults, his weakness, his greed. He was finally the honest boy I had tried to raise. But it was too late. The honesty had come only after he had lost everything. It had come only when he had no other option. I placed my hand on the glass directly over his hand. I could feel the cold radiating through the barrier. I believe you, Kendrick, I said. I believe you are sorry, and I believe you love me in your own broken way. Kendrick's face lit up with a fragile hope. Then you will help me, he asked. I looked him deep in the eyes. I am helping you, I said. His smile faltered. What do you mean? I am helping you understand consequences. I said, my voice steady but heavy with sorrow. I am helping you learn the lesson I failed to teach you when you were a child, that actions have a price, and you cannot buy your way out of everything. Kendrick's face fell, crumbling into despair. Pop, no. I forgave you, Kendrick, I continued. In my heart I have forgiven you. I do not carry the anger anymore. I do not carry the hate. I have let it go. Then get me out, he screamed, pulling at his cuffs. No, I said. Forgiveness is spiritual, son. Justice is physical. You tried to kill me. You tried to defraud me. You broke the law. And now you have to pay the debt. I stood up. My legs felt heavy as if I were carrying the weight of the entire building. Sasha Patel told me you have maybe a month left, I said. Your body is too far gone. Even if I bought you a kidney today, you wouldn't survive the surgery. Kendrick wailed, a sound of pure anguish. So this is it. This is how we say goodbye. I leaned close to the microphone. This is not a punishment, Kendrick. This is a mercy. In here, you cannot hurt anyone else. In here, you have to face yourself. Use the time you have left. Make your peace with God, because He is the only one who can grant you the parole you are looking for. I turned away from the glass. Pop, do not leave me, Kendrick screamed. Daddy, please! I walked toward the door. I did not look back. I could hear him sobbing, calling out for the father he had tried to bury. I walked out of the jail and into the bright, harsh sunlight of the parking lot. I got into the back of my car and closed the door. Drive, I told Michael. Where to, sir? He asked, watching me in the rearview mirror. Home, I said. But I did not mean the Ritz-Carlton. And I did not mean the house in the suburbs. I meant the future. 2 weeks later, I stood on the observation deck of the Jefferson Tower, the newest addition to the Chicago skyline. The wind whipped at my coat, but I did not feel the cold. I felt alive. Next to me stood a young man. He was tall, with a kind face and hands that looked like they were made for playing the piano. His name was Gabriel. He was a music teacher at an inner-city school. He had spent 4 years on dialysis, watching his dreams fade away until a miracle happened. Until a kidney meant for a son who threw it away found its way to him. He took a deep breath of the crisp air, his chest expanding without pain, without fear. It is a beautiful view, Mr. Jefferson Gabriel said, looking out over the city. It is. I agreed. But the foundation is what matters. If the foundation is strong, the view will always be there. Gabriel turned to me. He did not know the full story. He only knew that I was the donor, that I had saved his life. He did not know about Kendrick. He did not know about the betrayal. I do not know how to thank you, he said. You gave me everything. I smiled. You can thank me by living, I said, by teaching those kids, by bringing music into a world that is often too quiet. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a blue folder. J.D. Harrington was standing a few feet away holding a pen. Gabriel, I have a proposition for you, I said. He looked confused. A proposition. I opened the folder. Inside were adoption papers and a trust agreement. I have no family left, Gabriel, I said. My son is gone, and I have built a lot of things in my life. Buildings, bridges, fortunes. But I never built a legacy that could survive me. I handed him the folder. I want to adopt you, I said. Not to replace the son I lost, but to honor the life we share. You have a piece of me inside you. You are already blood." Gabriel stared at me stunned. "Mr. Jefferson Research, I do not know what to say." "Say yes," I said. "Run the Vance Engineering Trust. Use the money to build schools, not just skyscrapers. Use the power to help people, not to control them. Be the man I know you are." He looked at the papers, then at the city, then at me. I saw the hesitation, but I also saw the gratitude. "I will make you proud," he whispered. "You already have," I said. He signed the papers on the railing of the balcony, the wind fluttering the pages. It was done. The legacy was secure. That night the news broke. In the common room of the Cook County Jail, Kendrick sat in his wheelchair, wrapped in a thin blanket, shivering. The TV bolted to the wall was tuned to the evening news. The anchor's voice cut through the noise of the jail. "Breaking news, billionaire industrialist Walter Jefferson has announced a surprise successor. In a shocking move, Jefferson has legally adopted local schoolteacher Gabriel Vance, the recipient of his kidney donation, and named him the sole heir to the multi-billion-dollar Jefferson estate." Kendrick looked up. He saw me on the screen standing next to Gabriel. He saw the way I looked at the young man, with pride, with respect. He saw the son he should have been. He did not scream. He did not rage. He just stared. And then a single tear rolled down his cheek. He lowered his head onto his chest and closed his eyes, finally accepting that he was the architect of his own ruin. Across town, in a greasy spoon diner, Courtney was scraping leftovers off a plate. She was wearing a stained apron, her hair frizzy and unkempt. She looked 10 years older. The TV behind the counter was playing the same broadcast. Courtney looked up as the anchor mentioned my name. She saw the headline. She saw Gabriel shaking my hand. She saw the billions she had tried to steal being handed over to a stranger. She froze. The plate in her hand slipped from her soapy fingers. It hit the floor and shattered into a dozen pieces. "Hey, watch it," her boss yelled from the kitchen. "That comes out of your pay." Courtney did not answer. She just stared at the screen, at the life she could have had if she had just been a decent human being. She fell to her knees amidst the broken ceramic and began to weep, not for her loss, but for the emptiness of her soul. Back in the penthouse, I turned off the TV. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights one last time. I was tired. My side ached. But my heart was light. I had cleared the rubble. I had poured a new foundation. And now I could finally rest. I raised my glass to the reflection in the window. "To new beginnings," I whispered. And for the first time in a long time, the man looking back at me smiled. Here is the moral of the story and the call to action written in English to match the screenplay's tone. The moral of the story. The saga of Walter Jefferson serves as a powerful testament to the fact that, while we cannot choose our blood relatives, we absolutely have the power to choose our family. For 40 years, Walter operated under the misconception that parental love meant endless sacrifice and unconditional tolerance. He believed that if he gave enough his time, his money, and eventually a part of his own body, his son would eventually learn to value him. But Kendrick proved that for some, generosity is not a gift to be cherished, but a weakness to be exploited. The most profound lesson here is that true legacy is not about DNA, it is about character. Kendrick viewed his father as a disposable resource, a bank account with a pulse. In his blind greed, he failed to realize that the true value of Walter Jefferson wasn't his millions, but his integrity, his resilience, and his capacity to build. By trying to steal the fruit without tending to the tree, Kendrick lost everything. Conversely, Gabriel, a stranger who simply wanted a chance to live and teach music, proved that shared values are thicker than blood. Furthermore, this story illustrates that self-preservation is an act of dignity, not selfishness. Walter's transformation from a victim lying in a hospital bed to a titan of industry standing in a penthouse wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming his self-worth. He teaches us that it is never too late to redraw the blueprints of our lives. We must be willing to demolish the toxic structures we have built, even if they house our own children, to lay a foundation for a future where we are respected. In the end, we teach people how to treat us, and sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let people face the consequences of their own actions. Call to action. If you found satisfaction in seeing justice served and believe that respect is the true foundation of any family, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of betrayal and redemption. Let me know in the comments below. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to cut a toxic family member out of your life to protect your own peace? I'd love to hear your story.